Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the staff scheduling app for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Alison Cullin-Woodcock, food development and equipment consultant and all-round industry livewire. Coming up on today's show, Alison goes into shipbuilding.
We actually did a rebuild of the Titanic.
Phil gives us the standard format for the show. This has gone downhill quite quickly, hasn't it? And Alison dishes out some key advice.
Never, ever, ever advise anybody to do that. Ever, and never do that ever again.
All that and so much more as Alison chats us through her magnificent story so far in a side of the industry that you might not have even considered. A huge thank you to her for really bringing the thunder. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to give us a subscribe, a like and a share across your favourite social channels. Enjoy! And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Alison Cullin-Woodcock. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, well said.
Yes. There's a bit of a long history on this show of me just going, and welcome to the show, this person who I've not practiced their name.
Yeah, you get a gold star from the get-go, definitely.
Good stuff. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Yes, I just thought I'd better shut the door because we have a Cocker Spaniel in the kitchen, and if she hears noises and voices that she's not familiar with, she might decide she wants to take part. So just being, cautious of the obvious.
Yes, the dogs in our lives like doing that, don't you? I have to keep my door shut as well because we have a beagle and she will be quite happy to lay low for the rest of the day unless I'm on a phone call or a video call or something where she feels, oh, he's talking, there's energy, I must be involved.
Yes. All dogs have FOMO, big style. And yeah. I think as they get older, it gets worse. So ours is no different. So no, she's safely tucked in the kitchen. So we should be good.
Wonderful. So, just tell the world who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my name's Alison Cullin-Woodcock, as you correctly assumed. I run my own business called Clifton Food Service Consultants Limited. And basically, I try and help other businesses through the minefield of new menu development. It might be equipment choices. It might be packaging challenges in the current sustainable world that we live in, or anything else I get asked to help with, to be honest. I'm lucky enough, having sort of been a chef for a number of years now, that I got a little background there to help me with most of the answers that people are searching for. So that's basically it. Yeah,
and I have to thank you because you very kindly reached out and not only reached out, but you were persistent. Let's put it that way, in the right possible way, because you felt that your story might have some value. And actually, when we started talking, and I learned a little bit more about the world in which you have operated. Again, another side of the industry that I hadn't even contemplated. So beyond your world as a chef, and we'll get into this, of course, as we get through your story, there's a wonderful side of the industry which is so important, but probably never gets really spoken about.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about all of the people, as consumers, we go out and we eat as a guest. We eat in hotels, we eat in restaurants, we eat on cruise ships, we QSR restaurants, quick service restaurants. You know, every category
we just eat.
Has, yeah, exactly. And yet we don't actually think about, as a consumer, we really don't think about how that food got there. So having listened to, I think about 150 of your podcasts now.
Well, you're getting there. You're getting there.
Yeah,
I think when we last
I am doing it in reverse. So
you were way bit, yeah. No, absolutely. Top effort.
I actually thought, you know what? Nobody talks about equipment innovation. Nobody talks about food innovation that goes along with equipment development. And as a chef and an operator, the two have to go hand in hand. You have to make solid equipment decisions, but they also have to go in line with your menu and beverage choices. So when you go out to eat, you know your choices are endless. Your equipment choices are equally as vast, but actually having that decision making experience to be able to help customers through that process is really what's sort of given me this a whole new track that nobody else has done, which has been fascinating, and I will be forever grateful, because
Yeah.
it's not often in your career you get to write your own job description twice,
Love that.
and that's, you know, that is unique, and I've had some amazing experiences along the way, so some of which we're going to chat about this afternoon, which I'm
Yeah,
really
well,
looking forward to.
I think we've definitely given enough teasers, have we not, to anybody who's still with us 4 minutes in, or whatever we're at. So yeah, and actually, I was, when we spoke and we talked a little bit about your journey before and all of that kind of thing, and you came up with, I mean, it's not even coming up with, you can't make half of this stuff up. The story that you gave me, I was like, oh my God, I mean, I'm in hook, line and sinker. So we'll get to that in the fullness of this discussion, I am sure. But before we do, let's just go all the way back to the very beginning of, and that age-old question, how did you get into this industry in the first place?
Well, like the 91% of your other guests, I
Have
actually
you done the stats on that? Have you? Yeah.
almost, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually knew what I wanted to do, and
Right.
and
Oh, wow.
I was right there, yeah. So at school, I wasn't particularly academic, as my parents, poor parents, will testify. And so, but I did like doing home economics, and I did, even though my teacher told me I was terrible and I would never make it professionally.
Yeah.
I loved her, and I loved what we were doing every week. So academically, I wasn't fantastic. So when I got to leave school, I thought to myself, all my friends, literally everybody, was going to stay on and do A levels, and I thought, actually, I really don't want to. I have managed to secure myself 3 college places, and so I knew I wanted to go to college. But prior to that, I think that the driver was, we'd actually been to see a family friend in Windsor, and this family friend worked at Windsor Castle. And he was a valet or a butler, and he would basically serve the royal family. And we went there, and don't ask me what this gentleman had actually cooked, but it was a rice salad, and it had the most amazing dressing on it. And I remember saying to my sister, I want to be able to make rice salad with dressing like this. I want to make this. And I don't know what it was. I don't know what he did. It was probably nothing more than a fancy, expensive vinaigrette, but
Yeah.
it was amazing. And it had that sort of moment of crystallization when you think, goodness, that's something really amazing, and that's made an impact on me at 14. So
Yeah.
I decided that that's what I wanted to do.
And quite, well, and well played, and congratulations. Thanks very much for coming on the show. That was, yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. But what I find actually quite remarkable about that as well is that your palate was pronounced enough at that age to, I suppose, identify the fact that, oh, this, from all of the other rice salads I've had in my life, this has got something different.
Yeah.
Because I definitely don't, my palate didn't come alive, I think, probably until I forced it awake in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's just those little things that make you wake up and go, oh my goodness, that was something special. I mean, I'll credit my parents. My mum has always been a really good cook, has always, really pushed the boat out. I remember my 16th birthday, we had a Japanese pajama party, and we went
Of
shopping for all
course
the
you do.
Japanese ingredients.
Right? Wow.
Okay, so we would, and she would cook, and she would be adventurous, and we would, do different stuff. So, I credit her with that early palate testing, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, without those sort of new experiences. My dad used to travel a lot, so I'd be always the person saying to him, where did you go? What did you have? What did they feed you on the aircraft? What did you have for dinner last night? Poor guy, I'd quiz him every day.
Yeah.
And
Can
then
I hug my wife first, please?
No, I know. My poor parents, when I just started cookery at school, like most parents, they'd be getting the leftovers coming home on my bike, with whatever we'd cooked that week. So God knows, it might have been liver and onions on a Wednesday or something, but it was always something couldn't ever put it on a bike and cycle home with it, could you? Because Tupperware didn't really exist that long ago.
Right.
So it was always, anyway, whatever. So moving on from that, that was the crystallizing moment. I'm going to college, and so I just decided I'd look around and see what colleges were open to me that did a catering course.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to go and secure a place at Westminster. I also managed to secure a place at Cassio College, which is now West Herts, and also there was a college at Letchworth as well. So I had 3 offers. I would love to have gone to Westminster, but it was just too far from where I lived in
Right.
St Albans, and so I actually decided I would go to Cassio, to West Herts, and so 2 buses every day, or a bus and a coach, and college 2 years, and that was that. So I did my City and Guilds,
Right.
and so it was I think definitely the right thing to do, even though I do remember being told at school, basically there was only 2 of us that left to go to college,
Mm.
and everybody else obviously was staying on. So obviously the 2 of us were, a couple of dropout girls, and that's
Dropouts.
that.
Yeah. That's
You
so
know,
bad, isn't it? It's so bad that's. I think even to this day, it's still the message.
yeah, it's
And
very
yet
sad.
we're all
Very
different.
sad.
We're all, some of us, I suppose, are forced into academic because people think, well, they're intelligent, so they should be doing academia. But the intelligence comes in so many different forms. And I
Yes.
had a very similar situation. I didn't become a chef, but I had a very similar situation to you in your home ec class. My home ec teacher said to me that I would never do anything with food and drink, and I was like, but I love it. I
Yeah.
enjoy doing it. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I can't get it perfectly right the first time I do it, but I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just shows you the importance of the messages that we get sent when we're
Yeah.
impressionable, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So going to college, I think, was the best thing I did for those 2 years. So did my sitting guilds, because thought, well, I can be qualified in the 2 years it's going to take my friends to get A levels that I don't need, and
Yeah,
then I can go off and get a job, earn some money, and get going. So that was that. It wasn't difficult, and I absolutely loved college.
right.
I'm still in touch with friends that are, still not in the industry, obviously, but still in touch with college friends, and it really was a wake up. I think the ratio of girls to boys was probably 70 boys, 30 girls,
Right.
which I don't know what it's like now, but I wouldn't imagine it's dramatically different. And so when I qualified and did my 706-1, 706, 707, 717 for the 2 years, absolutely loved it. And then obviously went out and got my first job. But in between times, I'd done some Saturday jobs, as you do, because you still need money for everything else when you're that age.
Yeah.
So I'd worked at British Home Stores in St Albans, and I was in their staff restaurant on a Saturday doing toast for 70 people,
Right.
trying
Well,
not to burn the place down,
got to
as you do.
start somewhere, haven't you?
Exactly. And then my second Saturday job was Water and Barn, which is still there, I think, in St Albans, and I was a waitress. And the key thing was learning to multitask, remember how many tables you had, and remembering how many orders you would have for coffee and tea cakes on a Saturday morning when there was probably 160 tables in this restaurant.
Mm.
And there'd probably be, I don't know, 20 of us. But it was multitasking and running at its finest. So yes, so that was
Yeah.
fabulous.
But also, I suppose the great thing about that, I think, from the outside looking in, is that, yes, okay, you're kind of making your way and your path is now beginning to carve itself out as a chef because that's what you're getting yourself qualified in.
Mm.
But actually taking the front of house job as well, I mean, must really, really enhance your kind of overall understanding of how this is all interlinked together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons that I did the City and Guilds and the 706 rather than doing what I think I could have done was the OND at that stage was I didn't, although I had the qualifications to do the higher course, or the more management style course. The last thing I wanted to do from my perspective at that early age was to not be able to know the basics. So to have to then ask somebody how to do a basic task, how to do a basic job. And so I thought, okay, well, if I do 2 years of craft and I do 2 years of kitchen and front of house, then I will then have a solid understanding to then, build on from a future perspective in terms of management training. And I was thinking at the time, I'm sure in the future I can do some management training courses at some point. I'm sure somebody would put me on that. So I thought the last thing I want to do is to be that person who has to ask because she doesn't know. So I'm going to learn the basics first, and then I'll just build on it. And so I think from an educational standpoint, actually doing that 2 years full time was essential for me. Now, I also appreciate the fact that there's a massive amount of apprenticeships out there. And, my nephew's on an apprenticeship and that's working for him. And that's been a great way to do it. But I also have another nephew that's a university and that's working for him. So, there's a massive difference. Everybody has slightly different career choices and ways to get there in terms of the educational bit. But I think the academic bit at the front end isn't necessarily that driver for anybody. So if you're not academic, sort of doesn't really matter, because as long as you make solid choices further down the line that are going to fit in with what you need to know in terms of those knowledge buckets, sort of doesn't really matter whether you're academic or not.
No, indeed. And equally, I think within that, half of the battle here is finding something that you're passionate about. And actually the learning experience in whatever form that comes is way different when you're super passionate about it. The willingness to go and learn and the willingness to actually even read a book on the matter and maybe sit some exams on it is way higher because you're just way more engaged. And I think that's not that I'm not the answer to the education system in any way, shape or form. But, we do ask a lot of kids to make calls when perhaps they're not engaging with subjects that they just don't get or have any desire to go into.
Absolutely. And I think the other bit of it, when I was at college, we were expected to do work experience during the summer holidays. So we had to do 6 weeks, and we had a lovely hotel in St Albans, St Michael's Manor, and it's beautiful. Still there. Thank goodness. And I did 6 weeks there. I did 3 weeks in the kitchen and 3 weeks in the restaurant. And that was my first moment of shame, which I'm going to confess to for you. So this was the mayonnaise disaster, unfortunately.
The famous mayonnaise disaster.
I think it just alludes to the fact that when you are having your first job, or worse, you're in your work experience period, it's most important to make sure that somebody is actually being responsible for you at that age. And I learned the hard way. The gentleman who had left me to do the mayonnaise for the afternoon shift, so I was actually on a split shift, although they had me working in the afternoon. So whatever that is, I think that's a full day shift, but never mind.
They call that an AFD, don't they?
Yes, that's right. Anyway, I had been tasked with making mayonnaise for that evening service, and I was told it was a 60 egg mayonnaise. So I dutifully got on making my 60 egg mayonnaise in my big Hobart mixer, and I had very specific instructions, and I knew how to make mayonnaise. We had done it as basic 101, and I was about 3/4 of the way in, and I started to notice that it wasn't looking like it should. And so I was starting to wonder about, I'm not sure I should continue on with this. And of course, there's nobody in the afternoon shift. There's nobody to ask. That we didn't have mobiles. I couldn't text, the head chef and say, excuse me, something's going wrong.
Here's a picture of what I've produced so far.
Yeah, exactly. And I was reporting into the chef de partie on starters at that point, and I didn't think I could disturb him because he was one of those people that really didn't like to be disturbed if he wasn't in the kitchen. So I was very, very, very clear that I should not be disturbing, unless, somebody died. And I guessed that, 60 egg mayonnaise going west probably wasn't equivalent to somebody passing away. So I didn't disturb them. So I got to the point where I seriously realized that my 56 egg mayonnaise had separated and I really, really had no clue what to do with it. So I put it down the drain. And so that was that really. And that was all fine until obviously the chef came in and I explained what had happened. And he just basically said, well, you should just have phoned me. We could have fixed it. And I'm going to show you how to fix it. He said, where is it? And I said, well, sort of down the drain. Okay, which was fine until a couple of days later when I was not in the kitchen, and apparently they had to have a plumber out, because apparently if you put a lot of egg mix down the pipes, particularly in an old hotel, apparently that's not good for the plumbing.
Really?
Um,
I can't see
Apparently
why.
there was blood.
Yeah.
Don't know quite why. I thought I put enough oil in it to make sure it went down in a timely manner, but apparently it might have been the hot water that I put on the top of it to make sure it didn't sit in the sink too long.
Ah,
I think.
cooking the
So,
eggs.
yeah,
That's
could
bad.
be, could
Mm,
be. So note to self: always ask before you get in the weeds,
yeah.
and yeah, or always ask before you get in the weeds, because somebody will always have a rescue plan that you are not aware of at that point.
Yeah.
And that was my first learning.
Well, it also shows you that, like, the importance of, from a leadership perspective, setting clear boundaries of what is and
Yes.
isn't possible, right? And also maybe the first question you should ask on your first shift in any kitchen, in your first job, whatever, is, under what circumstances am I allowed to call you?
Yes. Exactly.
Does splitting the mayonnaise constitute a good enough reason to call?
Yes.
But there we are. You live and learn.
You do, yes. And I always, sadly, every time I do make mayonnaise, I always sadly have to. It's like post-traumatic stress. I always have that feeling of, I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure I can do this. Somebody else will come and, yeah, just take a breath. It's just mayonnaise. It's all fine. I'm just buying this stuff in. There's really good commercially produced stuff. I'm not making it from scratch anymore because it's too stressful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so how did it progress from there? You survived
I
said
did.
egg incident, egg
Yes.
gate. Shall we call it egg
Yes,
gate
it
or
was
mayo
egg gate.
gate?
It was probably Plumbergate, actually.
Right. Okay.
Because I wasn't there to see the results, so that was all fine.
Yeah.
So I then when I progressed on from college, I then went to work for my very first hotel, and I was down at the Swan at Streatley. Beautiful, beautiful property, 4-star property on the river. I was the only girl in the kitchen. Absolutely loved it. I ran the pastry for them, and I did. Yeah, it was just pastry, and so there were about 6 of us in the kitchen. Had a great head chef, a guy called Kevin. He was amazing, and he actually let me work through the sections with some support and some help, which was exactly what I needed first job out of college. He wasn't
Mm,
under any illusion about what I could and couldn't do, and if I was having a meltdown in the pastry over fondant fancies and not getting my fondant at the right temperature so it would set, he could that was the next problem. He could actually put somebody in to help me, whereas because you didn't have Google, you couldn't go chat GP, can you please help me with why fondant doesn't set. This was prior to all this, and it doesn't tell you in a lot of the books why your fondant is not setting. It
no,
doesn't
it
tell you
only shows
unless
you
you've got it.
success, doesn't it? It doesn't
Yes,
show you what
exactly.
happens if
It's
it's going
supposed to look
south.
like, yes,
Yeah.
not if it's not what you need to do. So lots of learnings there, but I had the most amazing time. They also let me buy cheese for the hotel. So there was I had lots of experience on putting cheese trolleys together with a local cheesemonger up in the village. So that was great. So that was a whole new section of responsibility, which is quite frightening now when you think back on it and you think how expensive cheese is. And they just left, an
But also how
18-year-old.
important it is. I mean, cheese is just
I know.
everybody's
They were
vice.
crazy. I know. It was either that or it was such an expensive mistake if I got it wrong that they could get rid of me, I guess, if I did something, if I spent too much money on the cheese trolley.
Yeah.
So, so that was good. And then I went from there after about a year and a half to a London hotel, which I'm not even sure it's still there, the London Forum on the Cromwell Road. And it was the biggest hotel. It had 26 stories at that point. It was the tallest hotel in London. And I went there with a view to working my way around all the sections in the main kitchen. It was a massive kitchen. So they had one executive chef and 40 sous chefs. And what
Wow.
I didn't realise at the time was that the person who employed me didn't tell me that the expectation of every chef joining the business was that you started off in the staff restaurant, which was below pavement level, which was
Right.
fine,
Yeah.
no problem. So you do I think it was 8 weeks in the staff restaurant, and you basically learn to make custard and gravy from packet mixes, because this was back in the early 80s, and so I had to learn how to read packet soup and packet custard and packet gravy and packet everything, because that's what they fed the staff. However, what I didn't realize was that you needed to complete this baptism of torture before you were allowed into the main kitchen. And so the plan was that I would do this. I would go through this rite of passage. But what I didn't realize at the time was that the kitchen was very much the old style, hierarchical, frightening, brigade. And there was a lot of people up there. So I didn't realize that this existed. I had no clue that I had a problem one morning, and so I didn't have enough bacon for breakfast, and I knew that there was probably going to be a riot if there wasn't sufficient bacon for all the staff. And so I thought, well, what I need to do is I need to ask one of the chefs up in the main kitchen. So I'll go upstairs and I'll see what the situation is, see if they've got any bacon I can borrow. Didn't think anything of it.
That seems perfectly reasonable.
It seems perfectly reasonable. I had a reporting line. I knew not to overstep my boundary of, reporting. I knew who I needed to go find. And so this particular sous chef wasn't in. Given the fact that there were 40 on staff, I figured I could probably find one of them, but I couldn't find this particular gentleman. And so I thought, well, I'll just go and ask the executive chef. So in my ignorance, I just wandered across the kitchen. The vast kitchen, cavernous kitchen. And I didn't really realise that everybody was watching me at the time. And I'm walking towards the head chef's office, which is up on quite a large sort of podium. It's sort of raised up, almost a bit like the Star Trek Enterprise, it's that sort of design.
The bridge.
Yes, like the bridge. And so I wandered off, walked up the stairs, knocked on the door, went in, shut the door, didn't think of it. And the executive chef said to me, basically, what are you here for? And I sort of uttered the words, bacon.
Yeah.
I don't have enough bacon for breakfast, and I'm not sure how to magic extra bacon, Thought you might better help me. And so it didn't really go well, because he categorically then told me in no uncertain terms that yes, he could help me, but he had no intention of doing so. And that was the job of one of his second sous chefs. And I needed to go and find the person who should have helped me, and that he would be talking to him later. So we both got new sets of ears. And I got royally shouted at by several people going back across the kitchen in terms of what were you thinking of, dear? Those sort of phrases. Yes. So I learnt very quickly that the hierarchical necessity of a very large London kitchen back in the 80s was one not to be messed with, and you had to play the game, because there's no way I was ever getting out that staff kitchen. I was there for life. And I think it was crystallized with me when they made me go and choose the kitchen porter for the day as well. So back in the day, you literally had to go up to the loading bay every morning and go and find the person that was going to basically wash your dishes all day. And you had to try. It was just the most awful, soul-destroying, just dreadful experience. And it was one of those things that you think, this place is not for me.
Yeah, really. I was wondering at what point does all of this kind of catch up with you a little bit? Because I think it's one thing to, be ripped a new one, as it were. Probably the vast majority of people have had that done to them at some point through their career, rightly or wrongly. And you could probably take one or two of them on the chin, but when it becomes part of the day-to-day, then it's just, they're not running that place as it should be run.
No, and it's sad, because if you look around now, there's the Unilever Fair Kitchens program. My goodness, we could have done with that, back there, and sort of treating managers or teaching managers and teaching senior chefs about that leadership, that mentoring, that support role, not just throwing a pot at you because you burnt the onions, Yeah. I've had that too. I had pots thrown at me. You do what you do. You just remember to step over them as they slide through your ankles, It is what it is,
Yeah. Stiff upper lip. Let's get back to work.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Just remember to duck,
Yeah.
So, it's I think that particular hotel was not did not fit with me, and I think I managed. I think it was about 6 weeks. Remember my grandma saying to me, "Everybody is entitled to one career mistake. You've had yours. Move on." Because
Right.
it was, I need to leave. I can't do this. Just to cap it all. When you think about life choices and does that fit with your environment. I learned that was my first experience of learning what marijuana smelled like, because my roommate who worked in housekeeping smelt she smoked marijuana during, because of course we were on opposing shifts, obviously.
Mm.
And so we were always working at the opposite end of the day, so she'd be off and I'd be trying to sleep, or vice versa. That was I think that was the crystallizing moment when I said, I probably need to change. I probably need to change where I am. So yes, so that was that. We moved on.
Yes, indeed. So from there, what was the objective at that point then? Because you probably learnt that massive kitchen environments are maybe not my forte.
I think yes. I think I realised I didn't have enough experience in the various kitchen sections, traditional kitchen setup, and so I then went and joined a number of other privately owned hotels out in the home counties. The last one I had was Great Foster's in Egham, which is absolutely beautiful,
Star, yeah.
and just stunning. So I started there, and I am still in contact with some very good chefs who we used to work together. Just three girls, and we were the only three girls in the kitchen. And so one was an exceptional pastry chef, and the other two of us worked in pastry and larder, and then on veg. So yes, and my mission at that point was to run the sauce section, which I was finally allowed to do eventually, after a lot of work around the sections. And basically I had to work my passage, if you like.
Yeah.
I had to prove beyond all
Yeah.
reasonable doubt that I could stand on my own 2 feet, and I wasn't going to faint on a Saturday night when you had 120 a la carte. So once
Yeah.
I'd proved myself, I was it was good. I loved it, absolutely loved it.
But that's actually that's an important thing, though, isn't it? Like, just because you happen to perhaps maybe run a section well once
Mm-hmm.
doesn't then mean that you've nailed it, because there are exponential amount of stuff that can happen. The only thing that you can really do by doing more and more is just gain more experience,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
to help you deal with the stuff that comes up.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And so I think I think I eventually realised that if at that point I wanted to go off and get married and have children, I probably wouldn't be able to get back into the kitchen at that level. Nobody would have me. And so I realised at that point, after a couple of years in various other kitchens in that area, or that end of the world, I suppose, I decided I should probably go off and look for somewhere that could put me through management training. And so I went to work for Compass Services as a chef manager.
Right.
And they had a great reputation at that point for taking on people who had come out of traditional roles, I guess. So the hotel and restaurant route. And so I went and ran a travel company for them in Ware initially, and I was a chef manager there. So that taught me about stock taking, taught me about menu management, taught me about staff, managing staff, because I had a little team of three. And then I moved on from there because I had a really good manager and a really good boss. And she said, after a year of doing that, you can probably run a larger unit. So I went as an assistant general manager to a unit in Hemel Hempstead. So I ran that, and we had a massive restaurant there. So we had 400 people. We had a director's dining room. We had a wine list that needed to be updated once a quarter. So we had a chef manager unit in Watford. But that was the first time I sort of came across proper contract catering and all the vagaries that go with it. So when you've got different contracts, and you've got whether it's cost plus or a fixed cost, and whether we had a contract for vending, we had a contract for cleaning, we had a contract for catering, then we had a contract for remote services as well. So there was a massive amount of work that all of a sudden it was like a whole new bag of things to learn, which was fantastic for me, because this was a whole new area of stuff that I didn't know, which was amazing. I think one of the highlights as well was we actually did a royal visit. So we had the HRH people coming in, and so this visit was planned for probably about 6 months. So we had special security people on the roof, we had sniffer dogs around the building, we had all sorts of stuff. But when you look back on it and you think, wow, that was a really, really impressive time. And when I look back on some of the pictures now, I think that was truly, truly phenomenal what we did with what we had, because we had to do it all outside in a tent because we didn't have the ground space inside the building. So this was all in November as well. So there was a lot of work, but there was so much learning, and I learned so many things about not only the business, but also sort of what I wanted to do next, I think. And it made me realize that actually, whilst I had a big passion for the food bit, I didn't know anything about equipment. I really had this massive gap. So I actually went and looked for another job, and I thought myself, I see a lot of these salespeople coming in to see me and try and sell me stuff, and they all seem to have a pretty cushy number. They seem to have a company car, they got weekends off, and that looks like a pretty good job to me. So I thought to myself, in the naivety of time, obviously, as we all do, that somebody else has got a little bit of greener grass than you have, because I was working a lot of hours at that time, and I was doing a lot of evenings and weekends for events and things. And so I decided I'd apply for a position with Lockhart Catering Equipment. So again, they had a massive reputation at that point for doing really, really good in-house training, taking on chefs or caterers that wanted to learn sales and have a sales role. And that's what I did. So I joined them as a sales manager, and they put me through all the equipment training. So literally everything from a teaspoon to a complete kitchen and beyond. And so I joined them as a salesperson and had a region and had a company car, which was the most exciting thing in the world at that point. I was the coolest girl on the block, except I wasn't, because I was doing a lot of miles. But I loved it, absolutely loved it. I had some amazing customers, and it was literally everything from a teaspoon to a full kitchen. So they were very hot on making sure that you knew all your products, working with all the big key equipment manufacturers. So the Hobarts of the world, the Electrolux guys. So all the big guys that are really key to making big kitchens run, and small kitchens, to be honest. And so I absolutely loved it. So I had some fantastic customers. And literally would do everything from a greenfield site and just getting the kitchen designed, putting the equipment in, to doing new china for a restaurant or new china for a director's dining room somewhere. So I was very lucky, and we had a lot of fun, and I had a great time, and I was there for about 5 years in total. So yeah, fascinating, but great in terms of that training piece and that knowledge piece. And being a sponge and never saying no to anything, I guess, is probably what I learned probably most from that role.
Yeah, and probably the first foray into figuring out just how important the equipment side of things is.
Yeah. Yes, completely. I mean, everybody will have a menu, but actually the food comes first, the beverage comes first, but the equipment has to come second. And you can't do it any other way, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. And you can spend a lot of money on very expensive equipment, then find that it's wrong. So yes, it becomes an expensive mistake if you're not careful. So yes,
Yeah.
So that was that.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
Yeah. So where did you head off next after 5 years with them?
Yeah, so I joined. I had another little foray with another equipment company where I had probably two of my biggest project challenges, I guess. One company, we actually did a rebuild of the Titanic,
But of course.
as you do.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought that was what you were going to say.
this particular company down in northwest London was very well known for its big projects, and I joined them because I had quite a lot of light equipment experience. So the tableware, the china, the cutlery, the glass, and they were working with a particular consultant who was working on this project for a Japanese investment company, and they were doing a rebuild, a life-size rebuild of the Titanic that was going to be floated in Hong Kong Harbour. And it was going to be a 100% replica, perfect, of the original. And so my job was to basically go out and research everything I could find out about the original ship, and then find companies, glass companies, china companies, silverware companies, flatware businesses, whatever I could find, who they could basically do a replica of the original cutlery, china, glassware. And it totaled up to be just over £1.1 million worth of tableware, basically.
Yeah.
It was absolutely staggering, and it never came to pass. It was so sad. The project literally got shelved at the 9th hour.
Oh.
And yes, this would have been staggering. And but it was such an amazing project to be a part of, that it was it was, because it never made the light of day.
Yeah.
It just, but the research was there, the quotes were there, I had all the prototypes made, and some of this stuff was stunning. You know, that the level of detail that they had on their silver grape scissors for first class. You know, and coming from a cruise background, Phil, you will understand that level of detail at that level. But this was first class with bells on.
Yeah,
so it was
yeah.
absolutely beautiful.
God,
So yes.
what's a project? This is one of the things that I love about the industry, is that of course there are those of us who, service the industry in terms of the jobs that we do, but then there's also the visionaries, right, who come up with new things and new ideas and new experiences. And okay, this one didn't quite make it to, but make it to the, shall we say that the project sunk. But anyway, that's probably the end of my career. But nevertheless, for somebody to have this unbelievable vision in the first place, to say that, not even just to say, like, we're going to build a replica Titanic and that's it. No, we're going to build a replica Titanic and everything that was on board it.
Yes.
It's quite remarkable.
Yes, it is. And it's very, very strange to me that nobody else has actually taken that up since. I mean, this is sort of 20 plus years ago. Well, anyway, we did the work. We were about to
we
get
learned a lot through that as well, through doing the work.
Oh my goodness, yes, yeah. And I think, interestingly enough, I think that really sort of led on to my next role with Grab Brothers Catering in Nebworth, because I really did. Unfortunately, that prior company, I didn't really get on with the management team. They were in a different, should we say, different headspace to me, I guess. And so I really, really wanted out once I'd done this particular project. So I actually moved to Grab Brothers, and I moved to them solely and 100% because I wanted to learn about project management. And I realized I had a massive gap. So I could go in and do a lot of table stuff. I could go and do basic kitchen design. But I had been to so many kitchens and listened to so many chefs. And the first thing they would say to me was, well, I don't know who designed it, but they were never going to work in it. And end of conversation.
Right,
and so I wanted to be that person that had that chef experience, that had that equipment experience, that had the kitchen knowledge, that had the operations knowledge, that I could actually go in and design a kitchen that actually would stand up and would work and would operationally be solid. Then nobody would have to go in and go, well, I don't know who designed it, but they were never going to have to work in it because it doesn't make any sense. And so I think we were at definitely the front end of that design piece and doing an awful lot of work around trying to make kitchens not only sustainable and green, but also replicable for some of the chain accounts. So I was looking after people like Whitbread, but I was doing it with the support of one of their senior project managers called Charlie, and he was absolutely fabulous. And he was one of those people that just downloaded all of his brain in one go, and then I had to pick out the bits that were relevant to me. But I had my own high-vis jacket, I had my own safety shoes, and I had my own hard hat, because I could then go onto site and I could then go and sit and talk to builders and architects. But up to that point, I had no clue. So the whole point of going to join them, and they were fantastic at coaching me and mentoring me through all the little projects I had with them, was that they knew I didn't know it. They knew I was a chef in a high-vis jacket, but it didn't matter because they coached me through it and they mentored me through all the problems that I created for myself. But it also helped me in terms of, it gave me the ability to be able to read a plan, read a kitchen plan, build basically an architect's plan, but also then sit with people like general contractors and say, okay, why is the finished floor level different to what's actually in the building? Why have you put the electrical sockets 3 feet along? They should be 5 foot off the floor because we've got drainage to put in. So those sort of operational things that up to that point I didn't know anything about, and I had no experience. I couldn't talk to you about heating, ventilation and extraction and air conditioning. No clue. But by the time I'd finished a couple of years with them, I absolutely knew what I was talking about, as much as I could at that point, because I certainly was not the expert, but I had enough knowledge that I had some amazing projects to do. We did the Dorchester kitchens in London, their banqueting kitchens. Yeah, we did overnight projects with them. Just beautiful, beautiful kitchens, working with some amazing chefs. I did the RAC Club in Pall Mall. We did that as an overnight. But again, the kitchens are below pavement level. And so actually craning things in and then getting them into the building, pushing fridges up flights of stairs at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Old buildings as well.
Press the artwork whilst you go, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know? But I was so lucky. I had an amazing team that I worked with, and we just all pulled together to make sure you delivered the project with bells on, and made sure when the client came in at 8 o'clock that morning, everything was fabulous. Yeah. And we could hand the kitchen back. So lots of learnings, and I was very, very lucky and absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and I think the key thing there as well is that you highlight just how important it is to have a good team around you, right? Because there's no way in the world you can pull these things off on your own. You know, it's got to be a cohesion, and it's got to be everybody pulling together. And okay, we might have to do an all-nighter here to get this done, but we're in it together, and we're going to have each other's back.
Yes, definitely. And I think the other bit is recognizing when you don't know something. And I think I learned very quickly to stick my hand up quick. You know, if something doesn't look right, then you need to ask very, very quickly, because when you're doing a project and people are hot welding things on site, that can go wrong really fast if you don't spot a problem, or you don't know why somebody's doing something. It's always a lot safer to ask ahead of time than wait for the client to say, why is that bit of metal sticking out there? Why is that not beautifully, mirror glass smooth? Why do you have the taps on the wrong way round? The little things that really upset people, rightly so.
No, indeed, absolutely. And having that cohesion with the external teams who don't have any kitchen experience and don't, they're just there to do their job, right? But being able to liaise with them, I imagine, is massively important as part of that delivery.
Yeah, definitely. And everybody having confidence in everybody else as well, I think, that has a massive, massive difference. So I guess really from there, I went on to my first big role, I suppose, with Merry Chef. And I was looking to try and, I suppose, they were looking for people to come and join them who had a chef experience, but also had a background in sales. And so they were a privately held business at the time. So they were the first company really that launched speed cooking in this country. So the Merry Chef ovens now widely seen across the estate. So, Marks and Spencer's have them, Tesco's have them, Waitrose have them. Whitbread have them. There's a massive amount. In fact, I think there's probably about 1.5 million installed now in terms of speed cooking. So speed cooking was really, really at the forefront of technology at that point. And it was really interesting to me from a chef's perspective as to what you could do with it and try and break down some of those barriers. So they took me on, bless them, Graham, my original managing director and forever friend and mentor through the rest of my career, took me on as part of the pubs and leisure team. So I went back to looking after people like Whitbread and Scottish and Newcastle, and then some of the more local breweries like Macmillan's. So everything from menu development to commercial discussions about service issues or getting all the staff trained within a particular estate. So literally everything from soup to nuts for that customer, whether that was, a Whitbread account, with several hundred restaurants across the estate, or whether it was a small regional brewer like SA Brains down in Wales. So we literally did everything for that customer, which was great because it gave you a lot of consistency. And it also meant that there was one face for them as well. So they only had to pick up the phone to one person if there was an issue, or there was one person to help if they wanted to get a menu development session done. So yes, travelled a massive amount with the business. I absolutely loved it, loved my job, and was very, very grateful because it really was, at the time, it was very groundbreaking, and there really weren't many of us doing it. And then I think about 5 years in, I guess, I think we got taken up, or so we got bought out by a company called Enodis. And at that point, the landscape started to change a little bit. And there was a new sheriff in town called Dean Landesh, who was the VP of marketing. And he came over and he must have seen one of my demonstrations or one of my presentations, customer presentations. He came out with me for the day, I remember. And not long after that, he asked if I might be interested in moving to the US to run the US operation. And I said, no, thanks very much. Love what I'm doing. Like going to Wales. Love my customers. What are you thinking? And he said, well, we are based in Tampa, Florida.
Let me just come back to you.
Hold on a minute. Just let me take a breath. And to be honest, it probably took about a year for everything to sort of come to pass. And it was as, with most big companies, small company gets absorbed into big company goes, oh, need to have a bit of a reorganization. So in a sort of a couple of reorganizations, and I sort of realized, I think, that if I stayed in the UK, actually, it would probably be more of a problem for the UK business if I stayed, because I'd been trying to launch the Merry Chef brand in the US while still managing all of my UK accounts. So I've been traveling backwards and forwards between the US and the UK for about 3 years at this point on a regular basis, which was getting to be a little bit stressful in terms of that sort of time management and the jet lag. And also just trying to manage customers both sides of the Atlantic with the time difference.
Yeah.
But I think I'd appreciated at that point that there was a massive opportunity in the US. There was a massive amount of fabulous people who really you could go and show this technology to. And so when they came back with an offer to say, what about moving to Tampa and taking on the role of running the kitchen? We don't have anything, and we don't have anybody in the kitchen at the moment. The lady who's over there is nearly 70, and she'd quite like to retire. And she was a dietitian, and she had managed the kitchen over there for a really long time, but it was very much an engineering-led facility. So lots of dusty equipment and no customer visits, basically. So my boss, Dean, at that point, and Graham, basically we put our heads together and they said, look, this is what we could probably put together for you, but we need you to relocate. So I said, well, I just got engaged and I'm about to be married. So can you wait until after I've got married? Will that be okay? Because that'll be about 8 months, because I'm not moving the wedding. So I went home and said to my poor long-suffering then-to-be husband, should we move to Tampa? And he said, yes, okay.
Yes, all right then, go on.
No. Oh, poor thing. So he gave up his job in corporate treasury in London, and he basically to allow me to follow my career plan at that point. And that's a big ask when you're not even married.
Yeah, but
That's a big
I don't know. Maybe it appealed to that sense of adventure. It's and equally from the job perspective, something completely new for you as
yeah,
well. Somebody has seen something in you and said, "We need this lady to do that." And maybe at the time you hadn't even seen in yourself that would be something that would be on your radar. But it's just one of the joys of the industry, isn't it? I mean, it's just this opportunity that is so maybe left field and so out of your comfort zone, but nevertheless still has a lot of interesting things about it. Just falls on your
yes,
lap, and
yes.
that decision has to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. And he said, well, my boss said, listen, we don't have a job title. You need to write your job description pretty much on the plane, which is basically what I did. And therefore we moved in. We got married in October 2005, and then we moved at the end of November. So 6 weeks after we got married, we moved.
Right?
Lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would never, ever, ever advise anybody to do that ever, and never do that ever again, because it's quite stressful. You have to plan a wedding based on a pile of post-it notes and what you can fit in on your trips back home. So it gets quite, yes, it gets quite stressful. However, it was done, and we had a massive event. The first, literally, we got off the plane, and the following week we had a massive event for McDonald's. And my poor husband, literally, his first job, I had to have him get up. We had a diesel truck pulled up round the back of the building, and his first job in the dark was to get up a pair of steps with a torch and make sure we weren't going to run out of diesel fuel overnight, because otherwise I would have a dual temperature truck with fridge and freezer full of food for the following week, and it would be defrosted. And so that was his first job. And I remember him saying to me, "Is this the reason we moved to Tampa?" And I said, "Yeah, could be. But I'm sure there'll be better things on the horizon." And there were. So it was all fine.
Absolutely. So you were there for quite a long time.
9 years. Yeah.
So it was clearly the right move.
Yes, it was.
For you at that time. There's something happened in 2012 which just blew my mind.
Yeah. Yes, there was. So as part of the culinary team that we set up, we as a business, as Enotis and Wellbuilt, which was the next iteration, we had sponsored the Bocuse store competition since its inception, so 20 plus years. And in 2012, we had a competition that was for the US Heats in Orlando for the US team. And we had all the kitchens that we had put together with full equipment that we had provided free of charge. Obviously, one of the main contributors was the Bocuse team, and Paul Bocuse in particular, and obviously his son, who runs a restaurant over there. And this was also the year that Disney had released Ratatouille, the film. And we had basically been instructed that at the end of the competitions, so you have to imagine this, there are 6 kitchens set up in part of Epcot, and there are chefs all over the place. Disney has the theory that if in doubt, throw people at it. So
right.
we had probably 150 chefs, some of which run around on the what do you call them, the balancing, it doesn't matter, like the things on 2 wheels that get you from A to B.
Yes,
because
I know
they
the things you mean.
massive environment to sort of look after. Anyway, so behind the scenes we had all these kitchens, and as support backup staff and the rest of the culinary team, we were told that we had to line up behind the back of the kitchens, literally side by side, and there were some curtains that they were going to open halfway along. So between kitchens sort of 3 and 4, the curtains, these purple curtains, were going to open, and Paul Bocuse was then going to walk down in front of all the staff behind us. He was then going to turn left, and amongst an awful lot of dry ice and smoke and hullabaloo music, as Disney is inclined to do, he was then going to walk down this small walkway and the curtains were going to open and he was going to come front centre in front of this massive audience of about 800 to 1,000 people. So all of these people were expecting it. We were briefed, fully briefed. And so we all lined up. Paul Bocuse came down, shaking everybody's hands. And unfortunately, either he hadn't been told or he hadn't decided that he was going to do his own thing because it was his damn competition, quite frankly. I don't know. He got to me because I was just about at the entrance point where he needed to turn left. Curtains would open and music would blast. However, he decided he wasn't going to do that. He was going to carry on down the line, shaking people's hands, got to the end, and instead of there being a Paul Bocuse moment, there was a Ratatouille moment because they had to open the curtains, the dry ice kicked off, the music kicked off. Paul Bocuse was nowhere in sight, but there was just an 8-foot purple rat in place.
Of course there was.
And then Paul Bocuse happily popped out at the under end of the curtains, way down 15 feet further along the chef's line. And it was a moment of pure bliss and hilarity, except we couldn't laugh because it was a seminal moment meeting Chef Paul Bocuse. And I cherish the picture that I have with him as part of the whole experience. And you can't pay for that. It's just absolutely amazing.
And he's thinking, I am, what kind of imbeciles am I working with here?
Yes. And I have an 8-foot, purple rat in my place. But the poor people from Disney, they were so stressed about it. But they smiled, extra dry ice, extra big music, and we all
extra people.
We all clapped the rat. We all clapped the rat. And
I think the thing is that the audience probably wouldn't know any different, really. Maybe they'd just be going, well, this is a bit weird, but okay, yes. I'll go with it.
Yes, because it got the full Disney treatment no matter what. Yeah. So you really didn't know what had happened at that point. And it was only us along the back line that realised that actually he should have gone that way and he's actually gone that way. That's probably not what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yes. I always find that Disney is so understated with things, aren't they? Really?
Yes.
No flamboyance in any way, shape or form. But you also have, you wrote down on your notes, and I don't know if this coincides with this role or with another role, but trips to Johannesburg and to Kuala Lumpur.
Yes, I did. Yes. I don't know which is, probably the Kuala Lumpur one, because that's particularly interesting from just from a self-learning perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
So as part of my role, obviously, I had an amazing team in Tampa, and we built it up so that I actually had 10 kitchens globally and about 50 chefs. Not all directly reporting to me, but I'm so lucky that I can still pick up the phone or email any one of them. But at the time, we were actually doing some work in Shanghai, and then I went on to the kitchen in Singapore, and I was doing some work with the guys down there. And as part of the visit, one of the things that I said to them was about going to see a really successful client installation and seeing what you'd done in terms of the oven installation. So the chef had actually worked really hard with this massive golf resort in Kuala Lumpur. So the plan was I'd flown into Singapore and we were getting a minibus from Singapore up to Kuala Lumpur. So the day that we were scheduled to go, we were also scheduled to see a customer en route before we actually got to this golf resort. And we knew it was about 5 hours in the minibus. So myself and 2 of the other chefs and then one of the sales guys. And it was all fine. It was all going well. We stopped at the services. It was absolutely pouring with rain. And I had always said to the guys, listen, you never quite know who you're going to meet. So when you travel, do 2 things. Always make sure you travel in appropriate clothing. Never, ever, ever pack your chef's jacket in your check bag. Make sure you put it in your carry-on, because it's the one thing you can't buy if you get there and your luggage has gone missing. So you always take a chef jacket with you, no matter what. But you always, most importantly, make sure that you have appropriate clothing and your shoes are appropriate for where you're going. Right, so take my own advice, please. Okay, so I am wearing appropriate trousers, appropriate boots, ankle boots, which I used to travel in, so that was great, no problem. However, what I didn't realise was that the services that we stopped at were outdoor services. I didn't realise also that the line for the ladies was outside, and there was also this terrible, terrible, terrible smell, obviously from being outside in rainy season, and not the best in terms of sort of hygienic opportunities, I would say. So I had to just then figure out where I needed to go, and I appreciate that I needed to sort of get a move on because the bus was waiting. But you need to go, and you're halfway in. And so I joined the line that I thought was the right line for the ladies, and it was. However, I joined the line that had no toilet paper. I didn't realise I needed to take my own toilet paper. First mistake.
Goodness.
Second mistake, didn't realise that I was also in the line for the squatting toilet rather than the regular toilet. So now, okay, I'll just leave it to your imagination. Not only am I wearing the wrong trousers, I'm wearing the wrong boots. I have a business handbag with me. So I'm now trying to balance like so, thinking this is probably not going to work. So you have to concede defeat at some point. And learning for me, I remember coming out, texting my husband going, please get me out of here. I'm not doing a squatting toilet again. It's not happening. And if when I get to the other end, there's a squatting toilet at our hotel, I might cry and go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all right for you guys because you guys will be all fine.
Well,
but for the ladies,
you
it's
say
a
that,
learning.
but it depends what's going on. Because let me tell you, there's a story I have in a similar circumstance, and this was actually, bless them, this was in Odessa in Ukraine. And yeah, regrettably, I didn't know it at the time, but I was about to get norovirus. And yeah, on the ship, that's a pretty... I mean, anywhere, it's not very nice,
Yeah.
but I managed to get norovirus whilst ashore in Odessa, and the only option was a squatting toilet. So yeah, anyway, this has gone downhill quite quickly, hasn't it?
I'm just going to say you brought it up, okay?
I did.
I did
You're
give
right.
you options.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. No, that's great. Well, I mean, talk to us about the role in terms of how that evolved. Because when I was reading your notes, and some of the things that maybe a lot of us don't even contemplate are, how long it actually takes to sometimes get the thing that you now love and enjoy to that position in the first place.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that has really struck me about the role I've done is that there is a development process that nobody ever knows about. So I'll give you a live example. So
are you allowed to tell us?
Yes, I can, because it's in the public domain.
We're not,
Don't worry. Yeah,
we're not going to. There'll be a lawsuit coming from McDonald's in a second.
No. Because everybody, I am sure, who is listening to this, no matter where they are in the world, has had a McDonald's smoothie and frappe sometime in the last 10 years. So before they were actually launched, we did about 4 years worth of development to get to the point where not only did we have the recipe 100% locked in, but the piece of equipment that McDonald's were going to buy, which was our blended ice machine, was actually set up for success. So it didn't matter which McDonald's had this piece of equipment in the world. When you have 18,000 restaurants, you cannot afford to get that wrong. You can't afford to get the equipment wrong. You can't afford to get the recipes wrong. And so you have to work hand in glove with all the food suppliers. So all these big global guys would come into Tampa, and as part of the development process, we would work with McDonald's as the client, us as the equipment supplier, and then we would have all of the ingredients guys who would be supplying, the dairy or the cream or the ice cream base or the flavors or the strawberry banana base or whatever it was to make the original or to make all of the smoothies and frappes. But there is a particular way that you have to set these pieces of equipment up. And that can change depending on where you are in the world, and your ice can change depending on where you are in the world. And one of the learnings that I had was we were just about to put the machines into the Hong Kong market. And I'd come back, my husband and I had come back for a 2 weeks holiday, and I'd been watching an email trail of a little bit of panic starting to go on because we were having issues in the market, and we were struggling trying to get the blend profile right and the taste profile right. So if I sort of frame that up by saying, before you can actually launch a product, you have to go through a massive amount of not only consumer testing, but sensory testing. So when you taste a drink, how does it taste? Does it taste like strawberry banana? Does it taste balanced? Do you get a lot of ice bite when you actually have the drink? So doing an awful lot of work on sensory and training the chefs in sensory was also part of my role. But actually having that drink blend profile correct 100% of the time is incredibly difficult. It's from an engineering standpoint and an innovation standpoint, it's incredibly difficult to replicate. But what I realized when I was reading, this email disaster unfolding was that we actually had probably a problem with the dairy element. So ultimately, what I ended up doing was getting on a plane from the UK to Singapore and Hong Kong, and spending a week basically trying to sort out what the problem was. And it ended up that it wasn't anything to do with the equipment. It was just the fact that we had a different yogurt, and the yogurt came from the Hong Kong dairy. And it was completely different to anything we have in the UK or the US.
Yeah.
And so the content of that one item then completely messed up what we had to then reset everything. And I knew I had 3 days in which to do it, because I then had to fly back to the UK and then fly back to Tampa. But just one little thing that you don't really have an appreciation for at that time makes you realize that actually, number one, I had to figure it out on my own because you have no other support locally. And the customer is just waiting for you to figure it out. And so you've got to figure it out yourself. And so at that point, you pull on every last fiber of resource, reasoning, every conceivable person in the world that might be able to help you with it. And yes, and you have to solve it, and you have a fixed amount of time. So trying to sort of go behind all that sort of stuff and people appreciating, actually there's a massive amount of work that goes on around equipment innovation. And I was lucky enough, to work at really the crucible of that equipment innovation in Tampa for many, many years, and do some incredible projects with them and work with some incredible chefs and incredible customers as well. But yes, there's a massive amount that goes into it. So whether that's sensory training for all the chefs, or whether that is, working with other culinary schools locally so that we can train the chefs for tomorrow, and show them about equipment innovation and, where it's going for the future, because nobody has spare staff these days. So every piece of equipment that you put into your kitchen had better be solving you money, or saving you labor, or making you money, because if it's not, you shouldn't be having it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, yeah, and I suppose we've only just scratched the surface, I would imagine, of the kind of stuff that you had to unravel and uncover and get involved with. And you were there for 9 years,
yes.
you said.
Yeah.
So we haven't completed your story yet. It's only about 4 o'clock in the morning, so we're all right yet. But
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But yeah. So there for 9 years.
Yes.
What happened next? How did it move forward from there?
So 9 years in, we needed to move back. For my sister was very poorly, and so we moved back for family reasons. But I think the other reason was that it gave us an opportunity to be able to reorg the team. So my boss was fantastic. We took about 18 months to get the relocation back to the UK, and that allowed us really. Allowed me to recruit my replacement to head up the Tampa team, but it also gave us the opportunity to grow the team. And I'm very much I'm a fan of employing people smarter than you to do your job, that have different skills. And you've seen sparkly CVs, and I've seen sparkly CVs. When it comes down to it, you have to be able to cook. You have to be able to bring something, excuse me, to the party, other than what it says on your CV. And so I would much rather hire for a fit to the team than your functionality necessarily, because I can teach you the equipment stuff, I can teach you the specs, I can teach you the how to do it, but what you bring to the party and what you bring as a team member was more important to me. So actually, the gentleman I employed to replace me brings a whole new set of skills that I didn't have, which from the team dynamics and actually growing that expertise is a much, much more sustainable way to grow the team, and also hold on to the staff that you've got and the team that you've got. And, I'm lucky. We lost nobody in the time that I was there. And I'd like to think it was because, we did some innovative ways of actually training everybody and supporting everybody and just making sure everybody had a crack of all the fun stuff as well as, the hard work, because it goes one does tend to go with the other. So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, so you moved back to the UK.
Yes.
And what did you take up next?
So I had a couple of interesting things come up. So I decided that after 3 years I would make my own business a thing because my role got made redundant. And so I decided that I would start my own business, which I've now been doing for a number of years. And in between that, I've also had a couple of other roles. I've done a 6-month contract with the lovely KFC and amazing people over there. So I did a 6-month secondment with them doing some project management stuff. So that, again, was a whole new basket of interesting and just some stuff I have never done before. And literally completely blank sheet of paper and a lot of time spent on Google looking things up. But learned a lot of stuff, and huge respect to everybody over there because they've got a massive job on them. And then I also did some work with Redefined Meat last year. So a big plant-based company who are looking to offer an alternative to meat-based options on the menu. And I suppose from a chef's perspective, it was so fascinating to actually have the opportunity to go and look at and talk about and cook with plant-based alternatives, because I've not done anything like that before. So learning about sort of plant-based ingredients and learning about how you cook it differently, how you present it differently on your menu, what's your GP margins, what else can it do from the chef's perspective. You can't always put on a new thing on the menu and expect it to be the solution to everything. But actually different ways to present things sometimes give you a different answer to the question you thought you had in the first place. So that was, a great year with them last year. And then this year I've just really been doing my own business. So packaging solutions, food and menu development, and really sort of working with the Craft Guild. So
yeah, I mean, it sounds like you bring an awful lot of different skills to the table, based around the fact that, I mean, certainly from that first moment where you took the step away from being, in the kitchen day to day and into that sales role, from then on, it just feels like you've had roles whereby they've always tested you in some way. And I mean that in a positive way. I don't mean this is a test, but, something you're learning all the time. And effectively what that comes down to is your desire and capability, I suppose, to solve problems. And it's, the problem of, we're going to launch this product in Singapore, and Hong Kong it was, wasn't it? And their yogurt is not the same as the yogurt that we've been using. So effectively, we've got to make a brand new product that took us 4 years before, but we've got to do this in 3 days.
Yes.
So, and that's your ability and willingness to, I suppose in some instances, there's not much choice. You can't turn around to a client and go, well, that's not going to work. Goodbye.
Yes.
But at the same time, there has to be a willingness to go, right, well, here's the problem in front of us. Let's pull together and fix that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's and I suppose maybe that's one of the reasons I enjoy the consulting bit quite so much, because it's sort of most of the questions I get asked are luckily around what I've done before. Thank goodness. So, and if it's not, I'll usually find somebody who knows the question, who knows the answer to the question. So yes, it's been really, really enlightening, I think, and that's why I think I'm enjoying doing the consulting role now, because it does at least pull together a lot of the stuff that I've done prior to, including the packaging piece. So yeah, it's been fascinating.
Really fascinating. I mean, I do feel like I could talk to you for hours, but regrettably, I can't really do that on this show. Well, I mean, there's no reason why I couldn't, but nevertheless,
people would be bored by this point, Phil. Certainly by me.
But it's just it highlights again how diverse the opportunity is in hospitality, and maybe there's elements to it that you hadn't even considered. And I certainly hadn't considered this before you reached out to me as being such a monumental part of it, and it's really, really fascinating. So if people want to learn about you, reach out to you, retain your services, what's the best method for them to do that?
Absolutely, yes. I'm on LinkedIn, as everybody is, and I've also got a website, and so either of those will work. And I wouldn't say I'm massive on Instagram or anything like that. I tend to follow the Craft Guild of Chefs on there, but because I do some stuff with them as well. But yes, just LinkedIn is probably as good a portal as any.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll put the links in the show notes for both of those things. And yeah, thank you for giving up your time, especially on the back. You've not been well this week, so I appreciate you making the time to do so. And yeah, what a cracking, fascinating story you have.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely amazing, and I'm very humbled to be asked and included on your roster of glitterati and alumni that you've had in the last 3 years. It's been amazing. So thank you for including me.
Bless you. That's very, very kind. Have a lovely evening ahead.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye. And there we have it. What a colourful and varied journey Alison has, which also showcases an area of the industry we've not really explored on the podcast, around food and equipment development and the key role they play in the industry. We'll be back as usual at 8 p.m. next Wednesday for another story from hospitality. So until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.